Oops. Okay. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but this is Jonny Kim, and he was a Navy SEAL and served in the infamous Task Unit Bruiser in Iraq. He was awarded a Silver Star and Bronze Star with Valor. He graduated summa cum laude at USD with a BA in math. He later received his doctorate of medicine from Harvard Medical School. In 2017, he and 11 others were selected out of 18,000 applicants to begin astronaut training at NASA. This man accomplished arguably the top 3 things every child wants to be. He's 34 years old. So he became a Navy SEAL, a doctor, and an astronaut. And so his...
Or training to be an astronaut.
Yes. And
is he done now? Because that was 2 years ago?
Yes.
So he is an astronaut now.
Mm-hmm. I think he's awaiting his mission.
Wow, how fun. Does he have kids?
I think
He
so.
must be like, whoa.
And so his obviously him now amazing, right? It's like that whoever wrote that thing said like he's everything every child wants to be. But his childhood is actually very tragic, and I think that's what I wanted to outline because he recently went on I think this year he went on this guy Jocko Willing's podcast and for the first time shared his story. And I think before this only like
his before career story.
Yes, like before he got into the Navy SEALs, before his career started. And like the truth is like he came from a broken family, and like a lot of like we actually come from the same generation of Korean Americans because he lived in LA, which is very close to where we live. And a lot of Koreans, like our parents' generation, are coming from like war-torn country, and they are all traumatized, and that's why you see a lot of alcoholism in like Korean media, is because that's what they resorted to. Like they were so poor, like that generation, and
there's a lot of PTSD,
right? And so it's a little it's a little like when you look at Korea now, like it's hard to imagine because like they're so westernized and so successful. But anyways, so his dad.
It was different for the people who grew up here, though.
Yeah, so let's get into it because
from Koreans.
Yeah, his childhood was really marked by that kind of trauma, like that his parents came from. So let's get into his story.
There were some hard times growing up. I mean, I have always kept my growth, my childhood close to the chest. Even some of my closest friends, I've never told how I grew up. And it wasn't out of shame or anything, but I think it was a little bit, I think it's always been private for me.
And this is a pretty cultural thing. I know like a lot of Koreans are private. Even us amongst our family are very private. And it's like, it's a little strange from the outside looking in, I feel like, especially because more Western and like Hispanic, especially, like they're a lot more open with each other. But like I think Korean and like even like Japanese, like they're very private. And so I think what he's speaking to is more of a cultural thing than it is a shame thing.
Yes.
And it's been a part of my identity. And for a lot of the same reasons why I wanted to be a SEAL, that creed we swore to never really, to do the things we do and not seek recognition for it. I've never, in that same vein, I never wanted to tell my story. But, my dad was a hard worker. He was uneducated. I think I don't know if he finished high school, but he grew up in a poor rural area in South Korea. And my mother was from a middle or well-to-do class family in South Korea. My grandfather was a professor at Seoul University. And so they came over here, and my dad worked for what he didn't have for education. He more than made up for with just pure grit and work ethic. And like a lot of Korean Americans, especially in Los Angeles, he owned a liquor store in downtown Los Angeles near South Central. And I think a lot of what
South Central is like near the ghetto.
Yeah,
like,
if you guys don't know Los Angeles, it's not a good part of Los Angeles. It's not a glamorous part.
It was near Compton. It was near the areas that were sung about in those rap songs. Like
yeah.
Poor.
So yeah, you would need a gun basically if you were to operate a liquor store. I think if you operate a liquor store in general, but
For sure.
especially
Remember
in that
the
area.
LA riots and stuff?
A lot of the decisions I've made in my life started with my father. And growing up, my father had a lot of demons, like a lot of people, and I think he did the best he could to live with those demons, but a lot of times he didn't have the mental strength to really not let those demons get a hold of him. And so much of what I've learned in my life has been what not to do by example of my father. And growing up, I mean, it just seems like a different life to me now, because I've had different experiences, so many humbling experiences. When I think about where I came from, it seems like a big accident. This seems like an accident. To be sitting.
It's so weird that he says that. You know, I think he speaks to actually why I wanted to cover the stories, because when he says like that, you know, that like his relationship with his dad, it seems like such a lifetime ago. I think it's important, and I think the same way that he thinks it's important to share the stories, because like how you grew up doesn't necessarily define what you're going to do with the rest of your life.
Yes.
That's just how you grew up, and that I think
It doesn't have to.
I think it's a lot more common for people to come like from broken families, or to actually like even be in one like currently. And it's like his story, if anything, outlines like that doesn't define a person. It's really what you do, you know, what you decide to do. And it's like, I've heard the saying, like, a smart person learns from their mistakes, but a really smart person learns from other mistakes. And he said, a lot of what he learned not to do was from his father. And it's like, tragically, it's like, oh, like if you have, you know, decent parents, I guess, like they'll teach you what not to do, or what to do, right?
There'll be good examples, and you can follow in their steps, because it's like, okay, that's what I should do. But
I think if you're smart enough, you can actually learn from equally bad parents.
Well, you don't have to be smart enough. You just have to understand that, like, oh, you know, okay, crap, I had a bad example there.
Yeah.
So
don't do that.
What am I going to learn from that? And it's like, okay, I shouldn't react like that, even if it's coming from within, you know, like,
right. Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep going.
It's just like perspective, but he's very, almost like wise in that. I don't think you have to be technically smart.
And the weird thing is, he feels like everything he's like, he keeps saying like, it feels like an accident that he's here. And it's almost like there's almost no other way you could have lived your life if you didn't take all the opportunities that was given to you. And like, I think he made up from I mean, he's going to tell it, but he made up from an early age, like at 16, that he wanted to become a Navy SEAL, and nothing was going to stop him from doing it.
Yeah.
And so already, like, and then, you know, the opportunity of becoming a doctor and an astronaut came from him making that one decision. And I think, and it's really interesting that like him saying it's an accident, but also the idea that like we have like a certain fate, or that like there's certain there's a certain amount of determinism in the universe. It almost coexists like with the way he looks at how things happened in his life. But anyways, let's keep going.
Here with you talking about this. Everything I've done is an accident. Being a SEAL was an accident. Going to medical school, being a physician, being an astronaut, those were all accidents, not part of the plan at all. All I wanted to do as a kid growing up was protect my family. Protect, really, my mother and my brother from my father, who was very abusive. And like a lot of families, suffered from alcoholism. You know, some pretty bad alcoholism.
So when you were experiencing that growing up, at what?
That's pretty common too in Korean families. We have a lot of alcoholics in our family.
Yes.
That's the trauma of coming from like a war-torn country, is they're trying to it's the cheapest way to forget about your problems, really.
Well, not only that, they also grew up in like abusive homes themselves, so they were that kind
of behavior was like normalized.
Yeah, and they didn't, instead of recognizing and stopping the cycle, a lot of them just repeated it. But a lot of them lost their families here.
Well,
That's
I think
how we
yeah.
see a lot of the broken families we see. It's like,
Right. The reason why we're pausing is because just to outline how common it is for alcoholism to be in that generation of Koreans.
oh yes, and the abuse, the domestic abuse.
Did you recognize that this was not normal?
It's hard to put a number on when I knew it was not normal, but I remember at a very young age having that feeling to protect my younger brother from it, you know, when the fights were going on or when the abuse was going on, to try and shield him from it. And I have a very distinct memory of actually trying to protect my mother one time, and it didn't go well. And my mother also telling me to never do that again, because out of love, you know, she didn't want to see me get hurt. So.
And then at what age, I mean, at some age, did you get to a point where you could step in and defend your mom?
You know, yeah, I'm sorry to talk about such heavy things in the beginning of a podcast, but you know, you wanted to know how it all started off.
You know, the origination story.
Yeah,
The origin story.
you know, that's why when I think about my life growing up, I was different. I was scared. I was a scared little boy, scared of the world, scared of relationships, scared of talking to people, going to school, of
That's
having
pretty
my
normal.
own opinions, of speaking up,
It's like growing
or
pains.
fighting for what I
Yes.
believed is right. I was scared. I was definitely scared of my father. And
Especially without a good example.
Yeah, and your father naturally has like a physical advantage over you because you're still growing up.
it was just living on eggshells to make sure to pray. You know, I prayed every night, hoping that things would get better, or that my father would see the light. And all those experiences, while they were terrible at the time, I wouldn't trade any of that for anything. I
Wow.
would never want to trade that, because
Then that would alter his path.
Right. No,
How would he
absolutely.
be where he is if it didn't happen?
But someone growing up as
I
with
guess
like
he believe-
all of that abuse would still say that they wouldn't trade it for anything. And that's, I mean, I think it comes with a certain amount of like peace with like your past, and that takes a lot of like
because you can't change it.
self meditation. Right. But
The only thing,
But
you
not
can
to
do
be
is
bitter
accept
about it.
and learn from it.
Yes, I think
and
that's the
move
point
forward.
where-
it's like we can't.
getting to acceptance is the hard part, and just being okay
Yes.
with it.
I feel like he's gone through lots of therapy. Maybe
Uh,
they get good. They get psychological evaluations once you get to the upper echelons of military stuff.
I know, but still, it must take years of work.
And then he went to Harvard Medical School.
that happened helped form me into the person I am today. And we'll talk about it. The teams helped
SEAL teams, Navy SEAL
channel
teams.
that into good.
So, at what point did you hear about the teams?
So I was
Navy SEALs.
16 years old, and I would say being lost was probably a good description of how I felt up until that time. And I was
16, common
I was doing like a martial arts thing with my buddies, and I was mostly just doing because a couple of my buddies,
not
Ryan
knowing what to
Callips and Keith
do.
Blum, were big into martial arts, and I wanted just to hang out. And my buddy Keith told me with passion I've never seen before about the SEAL teams, about a Navy SEAL. And this is 1999 or 2000. This is like no one knew what a SEAL was. This is pre 9/11.
What?
I never heard
no,
what a SEAL was.
I've
And he told
known what.
I think, but like this is before like anyone internet, and so it's like people knew what like the Army was or like the Air Force, but like a Navy or like the Navy, but a specific Navy SEAL and like what they did. I don't think people
like
knew
the
as well.
Green Berets.
Those are different though.
I know that, but it's like the same. Like they're
But
the
then
elite
people- yeah.
of the bigger group.
But I think
of the
people would
Army or of
assume
the-
Navy SEALs and Green Berets and like Army Rangers are all the same, but they don't know the differences between them.
Oh, that
And
they're from
that's-
the different groups of
Yeah.
the whole different military
Me with this passion
so many
about
terminology.
that quiet professional, that warrior that does these hard things that no one else wants to do and never seeks recognition for those actions. And there was something about that,
The Navy
about
SEAL
that
creed.
that drew me in a way I've never felt before. It called for me. And, you know, so I went home and went on my
Navy's
56K
crazy. You see that in the
modem
Marines,
and read
too.
everything I could about what it was a SEAL is. And I read a book that was pretty formative for me.
Army people.
It was The Men with Green Faces by Gene Wentz. And my decision was made. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. And a week after discovering what it was, I told my mom, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL.
So at 16 years old, the first time he hears about a Navy SEAL, he's like immediately drawn to it, goes home, does his research, and just like makes a decision right there that that's what he's going to do.
Well, because he had the question of like, what am I going to do? Like, I can't just, you know,
But
right?
but
trying to figure out his career path.
pretty much regardless of the external circumstances, he already made up his mind, which I think is interesting.
Yes.
And that's really what led him to, you know, become a doctor and an astronaut. But like being 16 and setting a goal is really what defined him.
And she had no idea what it was. You had to explain it to her, I assume.
I mean, she didn't know what it was. She just knew it was
military.
being a warrior of some type, a soldier, an operator. And it was the last thing she wanted to hear from me.
Yeah.
Did you get drawn to it? I mean, imagine like you know, you're saying that your whole life you felt scared and you felt weak and scared of your dad. Did you think, hey, if I do this, it's gonna allow me, give me the capability to protect people, including
Absolutely.
my mom?
Absolutely. That is completely on point. You know, when people ask me why I wanted to be a SEAL, it's so easy to come up with the superficial reasons. Like, yeah, I wanted to get paid to blow up stuff and jump out of planes and serve my country and shoot guns. But
Fun stuff.
those are all fake, superficial reasons. Those are absolute pluses, but that is not why I wanted to be a team guy. I wanted to be a team guy for what you said. I wanted to transform my life. I wanted to learn the skills, to develop the strength, to become a different person, to find my identity, be someone that could protect the people that I loved that couldn't protect themselves.
Jeez. You know, and I think this is
This is why our military is huge, guys.
this is what trauma causes like young people to do is like they grow up really fast. And I think that's when, you know, people who have gone through
warriors.
like people like him who have kind of understood like what they don't want in life, they can immediately identify like what they want to do in life. And I think
Well, if it's been told, like that's totally indoctrination
right.
of what they like. They're such good salespeople.
No,
like,
wait, what are you talking about?
Like the Navy, how they tell
No,
him, like,
but
to
he
be
wasn't
part of a
recruited.
team to be
No,
he
but-
looked it up. He looked up their mantra. He looked
No,
up
no,
what
and that's
it
what I'm
is,
saying.
to find their identity and to be able to protect
Yeah, so he
the
wasn't
people you
sold though.
love.
I think he found an intrinsic motivation that
No,
that got
he's
him
always
through.
wanted to protect his family.
No. That's the
thing,
intrinsic
and he
motivation.
couldn't-
That's
he
the
didn't
intrinsic
know
motivation
how.
I'm talking about. Because he found that, that's what got him through like the training, and that's what got him through like the hard Navy SEALs training, and that's why he was able to go through all of the hard work. Is because his motivation wasn't to like blow up stuff or like
No,
be a
I
badass.
know, and they don't sell it to you as that. They sell it to you as
No,
you're
but-
going to be able to learn how to protect the things you love. You're going to be able to learn how to redefine yourself and be all that you are. Like,
But I don't think that's something they sold him. I think that's something he was looking for.
I know, that's what I'm saying. He
Right. Okay. So let's
you
keep
have
going.
to volunteer.
Yeah,
You have
but
to be
that's what I'm saying
selective.
because
You have to
not
be-
everyone that joins and wants to become a Navy SEAL finds that motivation.
No, they wouldn't make it.
Exactly,
If
that's
it
what I'm
was just
saying.
shoot guns,
The
you're not gonna
reason
make it to
why
a Navy
he
SEAL.
made it
You're
that
not gonna
far
get
is
it.
because he found that motivation.
And now that I have more awareness of human psychology and the experiences in our environment and how it shapes us into the people we become and the decisions we make, I realized that it was completely born out of my situation with my father. and wanting to protect my brother and my mother, and that extending to really all people. I thought, this is nice, it goes to show how little we know when we are young. I thought that being a SEAL would solve all of my life's problems. And it gave clarity and focus to so many, but it probably created just as many more. But it gave me tools to deal with those problems. But just, it was a pretty naive thought. Like, and I even said it to my mother. I said, being a SEAL will solve all of life's problems.
Were you, so you're in high school, are you doing sports or anything like that?
Yeah, so I was a big swimmer. I played water polo. And after I found out what it was to be a team guy, I did all my research. And I, Stu Smith, who I recently learned is in the world of kind of like making fitness, Navy SEAL guidelines and workout plans. I found his book, which is maybe like the first edition or second. It might be a later edition now, and like did all those workouts, and then did it twice through, and just tried to push myself every day after school. I went to Santa Monica High School, so the beach was 3 blocks away. So always doing swims and runs and a lot of calisthenics, a lot of push-ups.
Was your what about school? Were you paying attention in school? Were you academically focused?
I was. I felt like I was going through the motions of school, and I did pretty well. I always got straight A's. I did pretty well.
Wow. It's really
but
well.
I knew college was
They
not for me.
wanted him to be a doctor.
I was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school, but I knew it wasn't college. And so when I heard about the teams, that calling, I said, this is what I'm going to do. And it was, it's to date, it is the strongest calling I've had.
Yeah, there's, I have conversations with people a lot, and man, that idea that you should go to college right after you get done with high school, I don't know if that's the best idea for everyone. I mean, for some people it works, I get it, but you're a classic example. I'm a classic example. I mean, when I ended up going to college later, hey, it was fine. You're disciplined, you're focused, you can get stuff done. But coming out of high school, I would have been just,
the focus is not there.
Yeah,
you're not there for the right reasons. I think everything you do in life should be for the right reasons. And going to school after high school because that's what your parents told you to do, and you think that's like the next default. It may work for some people. I don't think it's necessarily the right decision for a lot of people. Like you said, we're both prime examples of that. I think we both went to undergrad in our later years of life. I was like 26 or 27 when I went to undergrad.
Were you worried about when you went in the Navy that you weren't going to be around your mom, you weren't going to be around your little brother? Were you worried about them with your dad?
I would have been, but my father actually passed away before I joined the Navy, so I didn't have that worry.
What age was that? Like, how old were you?
I just turned 18, so it was.
So it was close.
Yeah, it was close. February 21st, 2002.
And was that? I mean, that had to be a weird feeling of this guy that had been abusive to you, your brother, your mom, but he's still your dad. I mean, how'd you wash out those feelings?
Oh,
reconcile.
It's a complex question. And just I want to be clear. Like, I have no ill feelings against my father, and I have forgiven him of the years of abuse that he gave. And when I grew a little bit older and I understood where he came from, he also came from a pretty terrible home situation. And I think his demons, he just didn't have the tools or the aptitude, the mental strength to deal with those demons. And like a lot of people, they pass those on, right?
Yeah.
The sins of our father pass on to us.
I think they call that generational trauma now. It's like actually studied in like psychology.
And I don't fault him. And with the abuse, most of it was directed at my mother, verbal and the physical abuse. I mean, it was not as direct with us. I mean, certainly there was, the belts to the feet, and I remember
We got that.
always kind of being scared to go to sleep sometimes because,
that's sad.
I
come home drunk.
there were times where being woken up with a cold glass of water to the face was
Whoa.
what would happen, or
Navy
being
training.
woken up and being asked which of my possessions I had to choose
Sorry
he
for
would break in front of me. And
Oh my
I
God.
understand a lot of that was just to hurt my mother, and he did a good job of doing that. And so he saw that hurting
That's
his
why I pretend not to
children
love my
was the best way
children.
to actually
Who's gonna hurt me
his
now?
mother, because my mother was a very strong, was and is a very strong woman, and so physically or verbally abusing her to a point, it was like, well, just bring it. It's not, but hurt my children, it's gonna crush me. When my father died, I feel like it was the day I was reborn into someone else. And I would probably have to backtrack and tell you the context of why I feel that way. Towards the later years of high school, my mother had enough of the life she had been experiencing, and she would have left my father long ago. But it was really us, myself, and my brother Jeff, that she couldn't leave behind to my father, and there's no way my father would have let her leave with us. That was not going to happen. So, but there was a time where she just couldn't be in the same household. So for months at a time, she had worked it where that she would actually sleep at a friend's house or go away. So at nighttime when my father came back, the food, like my mother would prepare dinner and food, but she would be somewhere else. And this arrangement was going on, and I think my father, obviously not very happy with the situation, thought it would go back to normal, because there had been periods of time where my mother would leave for a little bit, but always came back, because like a lot of abusive relationships, it's hard to leave that, right? And especially when the abuser promises they'll change and may change temporarily, but then goes back to their ways. It's a classic story. But this time was a little bit different, and I think my father knew that this time was different and was getting frustrated, and I think seeing that there were little options left, and I think maybe he felt
This is why it's the
cornered, and I
most
think
dangerous time. Dangerous time. If someone says, tells you they've been in an abusive relationship and they're going to get out, you should probably help.
They should get out fast, completely.
Yes.
In one day.
Otherwise, that's the time they are murdered the most. When they decide they're going to go and they try to go, someone dies, usually, if they don't just leave.
In a domestic abusive relationship.
Yes,
like that.
Especially if it's been a cycle like this, because the abuser does think they're going to come back, and once they realize it's not, it's just like all that rage goes towards, and they were already acting so abusive. It's like that close to just killing someone.
Cornered animals can be dangerous. Can be very dangerous. Not that I think he was cornered, but I think he felt that way. So on this particular day, I think it was February 21st, 2002, I was home with my mother, and it was during the day, and my father came home, and he was supposed to be at work, so I think it was a little surprising. And I remember when he came home, I could smell the whiskey on his breath, so I knew he was very intoxicated. And it was just, I could feel something was different this time. There was a tension, and I knew I had to stick around. And my mother was surprised and scared to see him there. And they went in the kitchen, and I stuck close by on the couch in the living room. And I remember my father came up to me, and some of the last words he said to me was, "I'm sorry, Jonathan." And he pepper sprayed my face.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, you don't need to watch this happen.
Then all I hear in the kitchen is my mother screaming for help and saying, he's got a gun. Oh my God. So I then, fight or flight. You do what you need to do to protect the people you love. So I got up and I did my best to fight him and get that gun. And fought as hard as I could, as strong as I guess a 140-pound-year-old kid could do at the time.
Man, it's light.
But I lost that fight. I still have a scar right around here from when my father was able to get a hold of a dumbbell nearby and smash my head in with it. And
kill a person.
I think they kind of turned the fight, and he was able to get his gun out of his pocket. Shot it in the air, and it was, that was the first time in my life that I faced a life or death situation. And as you and I know, there were many more to come later, but for different reasons.
For a teenager, for your own
this
father?
was my first taste of it. And I don't know how, maybe by the grace of God or something that I said. I remember clearly pleading with him that we loved him and that he didn't have to do this, and that it wasn't. I clearly remember saying that it's not too late. Like this, you have the power to decide right now. It's not too late. And I think maybe clarity or grace, in a moment of clarity that my father found, he decided not to shoot us, not to kill us. And I told him to go run, just run. And he did. He went, he left the back door, and that was the last time I saw my father. After that, in the hysteria of that, my mother was on the phone and called 911 and screaming for help. And so eventually, ambulances came and police came, and I got my head stapled at the hospital. I came back, and the police were there, write a report. And I came back into my room, and I noticed that things had shifted. I have a closet that has access to the attic, and I noticed that furniture was moved in such a way to gain access to the attic. And I told police that I think my father's still in the house and he's in the attic. So they did what they're trained to do. They sectioned off the area and confronted my father, and one thing led to another. I wasn't there, but shots were fired, and my father was killed. And I remember that day so vividly. It was...
sorry, I think there's a term for this. It's called suicide by cop, where you basically make yourself so threatening that the cops have no choice but to shoot you because you're just not compliant. You have a weapon.
He said he wasn't there. He went and told the cops. That means it was a long time because they sectioned it off and they try to get him out. But if he refuses to, or if he starts swinging,
but this is common though for people to come out with a gun and purposely walk towards police so that the police will shoot them, and that's why the term suicide by cop exists. And and it's unfortunate that it's just unfortunate.
I don't mean to sound callous, but in a lot of ways, it liberated me. It certainly liberated my mother. It was one of the hardest and most sad days for her. But it liberated her, and it liberated myself and my brother. And it taught me, it became the benchmark for me to do so many more things in my life. Because I don't think I was meant to be a SEAL. I don't think I was born to do any of the things that I've had the opportunity to do, but it's because of those experiences being able to stand up to a person, to a figure who I feared more than anyone, and to be able to do something that I never thought I could be possible doing, standing up to someone, especially someone who was threatening to kill you and the person you loved most. It was empowering. It liberated me. It taught me I'm not the scared little boy I thought I was. I can do these things, that I can be a part of something bigger than myself. And, I remember having so much foolish, naive pride at the time. I was naturally being 18 and just so angry with the world, just having so much hate to my heart. I think I had a lot of hate in my heart as a kid.
But it's like adolescence on top of like
all the childhood trauma.
Yeah, and abuse. So it's like it's almost like even more justified because of just the amount of stuff that he's gone through.
When I see my child, Christian, who is full of happiness and carefree and is like me in so many ways, I see him and I realize that is the person I would have become. And I want to protect that.
Oh.
But
he doesn't like who he became?
The life, the cards I'd been given, I just had a lot of hate in my heart. And I refused to cry because I thought
that's a cultural
form
thing
of weakness to cry for my father who had passed. And I never, didn't cry at his funeral or anything. And I remember that day, on that day when my father died, we went to the police department. And I'd already known what had happened. And I remember going in, and there were 3 cops to the side, and I knew then, and I also know just now of how warriors talk. And the guy talking was motioning with his hands, and he was recounting the story that led to my father's death. And, using his motions of how he entered, and he saw us come in, and my brother was weeping and very naturally inconsolable, and I was there, and I think we made brief eye contact, and I thank him for that, because I think he had the clarity and the respect to kind of stop what he was doing and realize that he was probably recounting a war story of someone he had killed, and this family was just walking through. I haven't thought about that in a long time.
He remembers everything.
Telling the story made me remember that. And the detective I talked to, he said, "Son, I'm sorry to tell you, but your father is dead. And this is one-on-one in a room." And I was just emotionless, just stone-faced. And he said, "I take it that this is not bad news. Is this good?" And I said, "I'm just relieved, sir." And he said, "I understand, son." And it's just a day for so many reasons that helped me be reborn into the person I wanted to become, that I've always wanted to become my entire life. And I knew from there that maybe, just maybe, I had what it took to be a SEAL.
Oh, man.
He had like all the training.
So this is obviously just a very short excerpt of his full episode on the Jocko Willink podcast. He goes on about this for a little more, and then he goes into his SEALs training, and then why he went into the doctors
to become a doctor,
right? And then why he applied to be an astronaut. And it's all fascinating. But man, cops must have to see so much just crazy. Like they're responding to basically everyone's worst day. And I think the cop asking him and talking to him and telling him they understood, like,
they have to investigate, but they also know that they're full aware of the domestic violence issues, and
because they're the ones you call,
yeah,
especially when it gets to like the ugliest. When you say like one person usually dies, it's like the cops always see it.
And if it happens to the way the perpetrator usually wants it, usually the kids are dead too. Everybody's dead.
Yeah, so okay, so you know what? That's actually a good point that you brought that up, because I wanted to talk about when he said after his father passed away, like he felt really liberated. His mother felt liberated. His little brother felt liberated. It's like, do you think his father had that awareness where it's like, it's either me or them? And then at that point where
he was the burden, he refused to like deal with the demons, and
right,
was,
so
like, pulling everybody down
at the point where
point.
after he shot the gun and he was like, I'm going to kill you all, and like he told him, like, I forget what he said, but it's basically like, it's not too late.
Those were the thoughts in his head that he couldn't get rid of.
No, but then it's like, at that point, do you think he was like, well, then it's me that has to go? And it's like, I'm not going to start a whole life. Like, it's just me and like the police or whatever, I guess, at that point. Like,
yeah,
that's, I think I would give his...
Because the father's goal had them all together. And he saw no way that it was going to be that way.
It almost makes...
So he did not want to pivot. That's why he was saying,
but it's like, it's almost
decision.
like a final act of love. It's like, I can't,
oh,
like, this is like my only way to let you go
uh-huh.
and like be liberated and like be free
is to like,
is if I, yeah. And it's
instead
like,
of being like, why don't you just like, if it's so bad, why don't you just go away?
I know, but it's like,
away.
it's almost like, it's like a tragic last act of love. Mm-hmm. And it's like, man,
which
it really,
sadly is it really love?
I don't know, but then
like,
you know the way he explains it, it was like, I felt liberated. His mother felt liberated.
He refused to get help for his issues. He refused.
Right, and at that point, he was like, and
they weren't going to put up with the abuse anymore.
Right, and at that point, he was like, this is the only way I can help. Is like this.
Yeah,
it's
because
the
he
last
wasn't going to go
choice.
see a therapist. He wasn't going to go cry in front of another adult who knew nothing about him.
I know, the mind is so like, it's like having a knot in your mind where it's like you can't massage it out, or it's like, I guess that's what therapy is. It's like trying to massage out the knots in your mind.
But if you refuse to let things unravel in order to sort it out, you like...
Yeah, it's like the Coney guy that we, I think we would have covered by now. It's like he had a mental breakdown, and he was like 2 months before, like he would have been fine. And it's just because of like the stress that he like he'd be holding on to himself and wouldn't let go of. Like he went into a psychotic mental breakdown that lasted 2 weeks. The mind is a dangerous thing to like trap, and so we should all, I don't know, try to be more aware before we get to those points.
The mind is implosive.
Okay, well, if you need a mind opener, go check out our merch store. And
yeah,
I guess if you like more, I guess we'll cover more Jocko. But I found like Jocko has some interesting guests. This is our second guy. We had Dakota Meyer on first.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, that was a great episode.
Interesting. I'm like, we have, as big as our military is and as many wars as we've been in, we have a lot of vets. We have a lot of people still currently in like, and it's like, wow, yeah, we have to understand that they've been through a lot, even though us cushy as we've had our lives here as America, a lot of us.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand why they would have these issues.
Yeah.
But like you said, even the other guy who had another mental breakdown. I mean, it happens. It happens to a lot of people. But there's like others who are like, whoa, if you only knew their story.
Yeah.
We should be just more kind.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the reason why we wanted...
Chill out and be nice to people, guys.
We wanted to do the stories, or at least I wanted to do the stories just because your tragedy doesn't really define the rest of your life.
Unless you let it.
Right. And that's
unless
the thing.
You make it, that's all you are about.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, unless you let it.
Then
that's a good point.
Then you just trap yourself. I guess.
All right.
Know.
Well,
but it always helps to get outside opinions.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best way to understand your own kind of like state if you're confused or if you're trapped. But that's like therapy. But that's also a good reason why you need good friends, good community.
Yes. That's true.
Call you out on your bullshit.
Yes. So.
And if he was probably a weed shop owner, I wonder if it would have come out very differently.
In the 90s, though.
Smoking weed, he come home.
I don't think so. Yeah, I
All
know,
guys,
right?
How are we gonna chill? How are we gonna figure out how to make more money so we can buy that mansion up there?
Good point. Yeah, if you need to chill, go check out our merch store. If you don't have buds, we're your buds. And
Yes.
we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe.